In this tutorial, I will show you how to make a general layout for your website using Adobe Photoshop. To get started, open up Photoshop and then left mouse click File at the top left and then New. Short key is Control N on your keyboard. So we're going to set our width as 1001 pixels, height as 750 pixels, resolution at 72. We're going to keep our resolution low due to it being a web-based graphic. And our color mode is going to be RGB color. Go ahead and press OK when this is filled in. Now what we're going to do is add our first layer. To add a layer, we're going to go down and click the little sticky note at the bottom right. It's below your layers panel. If you do not have your layers panel, it is probably tucked away. Maybe look something like this. If you cannot find it, let's go up to Window and then Layers, and then it'll pop up. So here's our layers panel. We're going to click the sticky note icon, which will add a new layer, and we're going to name this layer. The way you name a layer is just double clicking on the name itself. So right now by default it's layer 1, and it'll just increment up as you add new layers. So just double click it and we can just start typing now. We'll name this one header. So now we have header made. So now let's add an element to this layer. Now what we'll do is we'll use the rectangular marquee tool, and we'll select about midway through the layout. And now you can select anywhere on your layout, but think about what a header is. A header is usually your banner, maybe under it follows your navigation, and then from there your content, then footer. So let's just get everything organized and then we'll style it up to look presentable. So now we have it selected. You see these running ants going around, and it looks like they're moving, and from here we're now selected, so now we can fill in this area if we wish. For example, let's go ahead and take the paint bucket, which is this icon here. It looks like a paint bucket, and then if we fill it in, whatever colors in our paint palettes, our color palettes right here, it will fill in with that color solid. We can do gradients and fades, but we'll get to that. So now we still have the running ants going around, so it's still selected, this area. If you click another layer, it's still selected, so it's kind of confusing how you get this off. The way you do it is either Control D on your keyboard, which will deselect it, or go up to Select and click Deselect. So get used to those shortcut keys. They do come in handy. You speed through things a lot faster, but if you are a beginner, which I assume you are, just try to learn them as you go. Okay, so now we have our header created. Let's go ahead and move it up. Now you'll see why I made it halfway through our canvas here later down the line. Okay, so the next thing we'll do is create another layer. Now to do that, let's go ahead and just click this little sticky note icon here, and it'll populate with another layer. The reason why I didn't increment up is because we don't have a layer that's named this, so if we did it now it'd be 2, 3, etc. Okay, so now we have our other layer, which is named Layer 1. Once again, double click it to rename it. Remember that? Double click the Layer 1 or whatever it's called to rename it, and then go ahead and start typing. So we'll call this Nav. So now we have header and nav. Now let's go ahead and use our rectangular marquee tool again, which should be to the left of the selector tool, which is this icon here. Okay, so once selected, let's go ahead and do a selection, and now of course not as it should be about the same width as our header, but not the same height. So let's if you see what I'm selecting here, now we have the running ants. Now pay attention to this. In my layers panel, I am selected on nav, not header. This can get pretty confusing if you're not paying attention, so don't be on header, be on the navigation or nav layer, whatever you named it. And then let's go ahead and fill this in with a different color. So the way we change our colors is clicking the color palette, and it'll pop up with our color picker. Now from here you can pick any color. Usually what I do is I'll pick some abnormal colors, not even to go with the color scheme of the website, but more so to segregate individual things. For example, we could use lime green for navigation. Now at first it's going to look hideous. Let's go ahead and just do our placement first, and then we'll mess with the styling. Okay, so now we have our header and nav. Now let's go ahead and make our footer. So I created a new layer once again, and then we have it created. Now let's double click on layer 1, or the name of the new layer, and let's name it footer. So now we have three elements, or three layers. We have header, nav, and footer. So while I'm selected on footer in my layers panel, I'm going to click the rectangle marquee tool once again. And the way I'm going to do this is make it all the way across on the bottom. So as far as I can go, I can select way out there. So I don't have to get it, real close or zoom in or anything like that. I can just go all the way out in the gray or whatever color your background canvas is and select it down. Okay, so that's a little too high, so I'm going to go ahead and make the height a little smaller. So you just want a little bar for the bottom. Now this is your preference. Let's go ahead and change the color of the footer to something else. And it's blue. Okay. And let's deselect this. Remember, select or Control D. So select, deselect, and now we have color coordinated. So we have the header, we have the nav, and we have the footer. We also have a background. So as you see here, there's actually a lock icon here. This means you cannot edit it. The way to convert this so you can't edit it is just double click on it, and it's going to give you a new layer option. Let's go ahead and name it just background, and press OK. Now it's named background and it's unlocked. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is positioning. So now we have the three elements that we want, and then we'll get to the content later. But first, let's get these three positions. So header first. So header. So to be creative, what we could do is maybe pull this up more. And if you see, you can't see the excess of it because it is outside our canvas. So it wouldn't show if we did end up putting this or exporting these images once we cut them out. But this will be in a different tutorial. I'll explain that. So the next thing was we'll position our navigation. And I think best thing to do for this one is just to place it right underneath. Now if you want to slim things up and transform it, you can do Control T, and what it will do is provide these points. Now you have on the left, right, and middle, and you can transform this. Now what that means is basically you can make it bigger, smaller, in every direction. Now there's different ones that do this as well, called warp and perspective and different things like that, but we'll get to that. In this case, what we could do is just make it smaller. So we'd drag it from this point and just up, and it'll make it smaller. Now don't be scared, we could drag it as far down and it's not going to make a difference. It doesn't apply until I actually press enter on my keyboard or I click out of this. So if I were to click a different tool, it would ask me, is this the proportions you wanted when you did the transform, yes or no type thing. So obviously we don't want the navigation that big, so we'll go ahead and make it smaller. Now proportionate to your liking. Remember, it's user friendliness. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for easy navigation. Want people to realize what website they're on instantly. There's no need for people to look around for simple navigation buttons like home or contact or whatever buttons you're trying to make prominent on your website. Okay, so now let's start styling it. Let's go ahead and click header. So now we're selected on the header. Let's double click it. And when you double click it, the layer style comes up. Now this panel has a whole bunch of options. You can mix, match, change, and adjust to make it look and have the effect that you want. So what you'll do is go to gradient. Now I'm just suggesting these are good effects. Now you can do whatever you want. You can mess with these and play with any selections you want. But in this case, we're going to use the gradient, so I just checkbox it. So these are my default settings for gradient. Now to get into the actual settings of the gradient overlay, I'm just going to left mouse click it, and now I'm in it. So now it's checkbox. If I uncheckbox it, it's not going to show anything. If I check it, it does show it. Okay. Now, for some reason, you guys are not seeing this. It actually applying to your canvas instantly, and you have to press OK to see it. It's because this preview checkbox isn't checked. So make sure it's checked. And if it's checked, you'll be able to see the changes you make instantly without applying them to the actual layer just yet. We have opacity. Now opacity is the transparency of this over the layer. I'll give you an example. You can just mess with it. A lot of people are scared to mess with these settings, but I highly suggest that you go ahead and adventure off and try to do as much things as you can just to get the idea and feel of the styles and what they do. If you don't know, then you'll never know that you have that in your arsenal. The more things you mess with, the more you'll have in your pocket to use. Okay, so I'm going to just show you up and down. You can see. Okay, we're going to keep it at 100% opacity right now, which means that it's solid. It has no transparency. So then I'm going to click gradient. So if you click this, a panel will come up, and this is your gradient editor. Now we have some predefined gradients in here. I'm not going to use those, but let's try to figure out a color scheme for our website. So maybe a dark red going into black. So that's alright. Okay, so now if you want to adjust the scale, what the scale will do is bring the two gradients together or farther apart. So it's a further fade or a hard line between the two colors. Now I'll give you a demonstration of that. If we go down to 10, you see it's more of a hard line. If we go up, it's more of a fade into the colors. But midway is actually probably the best. Somewhere about 63%. Okay, so let's press OK, and this applies it to the layer. Now you could always go back, and you can also turn off the eye, which turns off the style layer, basically. Just like if you were to press this eye, you couldn't see anymore. The layer's still there, the effects are still there, but you could turn it back on and off. Let's go ahead and just show you that for the effects. See, the layer's still there where the effects are gone. Okay, let's go ahead and keep those effects. Now for the navigation, let's go ahead and do the navigation. So what I did was I just right clicked on my canvas, and I can select different things that are in this general area. So if you have a layer on top of a layer, you could right click and say, oh, okay, now that we named them, we know what they are. There's not layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, etc. It's nav or background, or down here it would be footer or background. Just so you guys have an idea why you're actually naming these, and it's not a waste of time. Okay, so, or at this time. Okay, so navigation. Alright, so our navigation, what we're going to do is the same thing we did with header. We're going to double click it, and our layer style is going to come up. Now from here, what we're going to do is add some gradient as well. Our gradient editor. Now from here, let's go ahead and change this around a little bit. So to edit these colors, what you'll do is you'll just double click on the colors. Now when you double click on it, your color picker comes up, and you can select things like that are on the actual canvas themselves, or they are just within here. So you can change this all the way around, go through all the color spectrums, and then go to any shade that you're looking for. So let's go ahead and go with this red, and let's go a little lighter. Press OK, press OK. Now let's discover the drop shadow. So the drop shadow is going to add the shadow beneath, if you see here. And it's alright, but I like to do it in a little bit different fashion as far as what they have by default. So let's uncheck use global light. What this will do is apply the same angle of light to each of your layers that use drop shadow. Now you can adjust it per layer if necessary. I always uncheck it because usually I have different settings for each and single layer themselves. So let's go ahead and uncheck that. I changed my angle to 90 degrees, and I have my distance, so you can go really high, really low. So if you go the distance lower, it's going to be closer to the layer or right underneath if at 0. So then let's take down the opacity. Now let's say that you wanted your shadow to be a different color. Just go ahead and left mouse click this color box right here. It is black currently. We can change it to red or anything we want. We're going to keep it black, so I'm going to cancel that. Okay, so it's very subtle. It's nothing major or anything like that. So I'm going to press OK. So now we have our footer. Now you're saying, okay, well, why would I want to go through these steps every single time? What if I want the navigation and footer to look pretty much the same? The way to do that and to transfer layer styles is by just right clicking. So we want our navigation style, so we just right click on it, and then you'll see a selection for copy layer style. So when you copy the layer style, it is now copied. So to apply it to something else, for example, what we're using in this example is the footer. Just click on footer and then right click on it, and then we'll put click paste layer style, and then now you see it is pretty much the same as our navigation. Now we just did that in a few seconds compared to us spending a few minutes trying to mess with the layer style. So now we have our header, our navigation, and our footer, and then an area for our content. So the next thing we'll do is we will add a new layer, and remember it's a sticky icon to the left of the delete icon, and we'll create a new layer, and then we will go ahead and write. So what we're going to do, the way to write with Photoshop is you click this T icon, and this is the font. and this is by default it's going to write horizontally. So what we'll do is we just click wherever we want to start typing. So in this case we want to click on our header, and up here is the color of the font when I write. So it's going to be white, it looks like. And so what I'll do is I'll type my website name, and then let's say that we want to scale this up. It's too small, we want it bigger. So what we do is we just click and highlight, and then we go up to right here where it says the point value. So this is how big the font is, and let's go up to 60. And then to get out of this, you can click on another tool. So we use our selector so we can move it around. So it's our move tool, and we can move it wherever we want. So just try to get it to a little way from the left side of the header, but not so much centering it. And then from here we will add a new element, a new layer. So we'll click our little handy dandy sticky, and let's name it. So what do we want to name it? We'll name this content. So now we have content added, and now this is the layer content, which includes nothing currently. So let's go ahead and add it. So now let's start to use our shapes, and our shapes are a great thing to utilize, as you can get some roundness in your design and make it pretty clean. So the way to do this is go ahead and just left mouse click the shapes. Now by default I have my rounded rectangle selected, and then from here since it's selected, I actually have a radius. Now the radius is the edges or border lines of the corners. What it does is it rounds them. So if you imagine 0 would be actual square. Now I'm just going to go back. Control Z is going to go back 1. So on my keyboard, Control Z, just note that goes back, undo. Okay, so for the radius, now if I put it at 20, it's going to make it a lot rounder than just straight corners, as you see the outline is. Now as I let go, you're going to see it. Okay, so this would be my content box. Now as you see, it's aqua greenish type color. Obviously it doesn't go with our color scheme, but what we'll do is go ahead and style it now. So as we made a shape, this is a shape within our layers. This means that we can scale it up and down. So it's in a sense it's a vector of that shape. So you can scale it as big as you want and as small as you want. Undergo the transformation in which it's undertaking. So whether it's big to small or small to big, it's going to keep the proportionate amount of pixels. Now if we rasterize it, we're basically solidating this is how big we want it. We can always go smaller, but it still will destroy the effects that we have. So maybe in another tutorial I'll give you more of an in-depth overview of what that is. But for now, let's go ahead and we created this, we have our border radius, we use our rectangle tool or shape, and now it's a shape. Now let's say that we want to rasterize it. What you do is you just right click and we click rasterize layer. Now what this does, like I said, is takes it from an object or vector object into just the layer itself. Okay, so now let's go ahead and just double click this and let's add a gradient to it. Now we're gonna go ahead and click on it. Now change the colors of the gradient, and we'll click and we'll make it just a little bit more. Okay, so it's a very faint, but it's there, content box. Go ahead and rate and comment. Let me know what I could improve on to help you guys out more. Any questions, I'll answer them. Systemcontrol.com for more tutorials and downloads, PSDs. We got it all. Alright, see you next time. Appreciate it.